1 o'clock. I'm calling the January 21st, 2025 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board to order. Carolyn, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Henningsen,
Here.
Huck,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Ms. Vanderwerf,
Here.
and Matsuno is absent.
Thank you. This is the first meeting of the ARB for this year, so this is our annual meeting, and the first item of business is electing the chair. I'd like to ask for nominations, please.
I'd like to nominate Chris Henningsen. I'll second.
Are there other nominations? Carolyn?
No.
You call the vote?
Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. So at this point, we will call for nominations for vice chair. Does anybody want to nominate Frank Hancock?
I'd be pleased to nominate Frank Hancock. Second.
All right, if we could call a vote.
All right. Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Adoption of the 2025 ARB submittal and meeting schedule. I guess unless anyone has any proposed changes, would anybody like to make a motion on that?
So moved.
I'll second. All right. Could call a vote on that?
All right. Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. And then the ARB rules of procedure. Does anybody want to make any kind of amendment or tweak? That?
No.
All right. In that case, would anybody like to make a motion to adopt the rules?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, if we could put that to a vote.
Let's see, Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
and Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting. The public may access and participate in the meeting electronically. Instructions for doing so are posted on the Albemarle County website at the Albemarle County calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom, and real-time audio access over telephone, both is provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it is your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. Applicants who are making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Staff will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. If applicants in the meeting room have team members attending virtually who will need to present, please make that known when you come to the podium. Everyone who is participating virtually, please mute your microphone until it is your turn to speak. Do any ARB members have anything to disclose?
No. I will need to recuse myself from the Flow Mercedes-Benz review.
Thanks.
I do not have any disclosures.
I guess my disclosure is that if we have not concluded by 3 p.m., I will have to leave at that point and hand over the reins to Frank Hancock.
I accept.
All right, so thank you. We don't have any consent agenda items today. Oh, one thing I forgot. Are there any members of the public that want to make a comment about a project that is not on the agenda for review?
No one online.
All right, great. So no consent agenda items. We have two regular review items today. The first is ARB 2024-70, Flow CVL Mercedes-Benz.
Okay, this is a proposal to replace the existing automobile showroom that's located at 1313 Richmond Road with a new showroom for Flow Mercedes-Benz. The new building would be positioned in about the same location as the existing building, and the proposal would maintain the building's orientation to the street as well as the general layout of the site. The proposed building design is a version of the company's trademark design. And there are other buildings here in this image based on that design as well. The roof form, the ACM panels, particularly those that are angled and curved, and the expansive glass are all part of the trademark design. The roof, with its thin form, rounded corners, and deep overhang, is an unusual feature in the corridor, but the metal panels, geometric shapes, and the large areas of storefront glass are compatible with other contemporary auto dealerships along the corridor. The exterior design is meant to showcase the vehicles on display inside the building with an expansive glass at the northwest corner. The glass corner, combined with the topography of the site, result in the showroom floor standing well above the parking area that's located west of the building. The vehicles on display inside the building will appear elevated to viewers outside the building, and interior illumination will highlight the building at night. Two features of the building are identified in the staff report as needing additional clarification. One is where the building steps back from the main facade to the vehicle delivery area, then to the service drive reception. Although the stepped form should help break up the mass and establish some human scale, the renderings show the eastern end of the building as a very dark mass. The dark color and shadows there may reduce the positive benefit of the stepping, patterning, and divisions. On the other end of the building, the west end, there are metal panels above a black painted base. The illustrations suggest a continuous appearance from panel to base, but the reflectance of the metal panels is expected to differ from the painted finish. The surfaces are expected to wear differently, and the paint could be a maintenance issue. So we've recommended additional details to clarify both conditions. Service building at the rear of the site would be painted as part of this proposal, and the blank metal siding on the side elevations would be painted white gloss. Although the service building is set back from the street, the west elevation is visible from the corridor, and we've recommended a more muted tone to help minimize the impacts of that blank wall. The proposal includes some minor changes to the site compared to the previously approved plan. The layout and distribution of parking and display spaces was approved with a special use permit for outdoor display in 2008. So a plan or diagram will need to be included in the site plan to confirm consistency with that approval. Our recommendation is for revisions to the proposal to be reviewed by the ARB in a future meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thanks a lot for that presentation. Guess we'll start with Dade if you have any questions.
Thank you, Margaret. No questions.
All right, Frank Stoner.
I'm recused.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Frank Hancock.
Thank you, Margaret. Not sure if I read it correctly. Was the service part of the building in the front before and now it's been shifted to the east side, or did I read that plan wrong? Has it always been on that side?
Let's see if we can.
Or was that just orientation of the plan? Maybe that's throwing me.
I'm not sure if there is a service entrance visible from the street currently.
Yeah, I believe currently the service is at the facility on the rear. So this will be a new service bay on the one closer.
Should
to
we
the
look at
east.
the site plan, the black, just the line drawing?
Yeah, 250 is on the left.
Oh, no, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I was oriented wrong, sorry. No other questions.
Thanks. I don't have any questions. So if the applicant has a presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Schaefer. I'm the Charlottesville Studio Director at Design Develop. Thank you, Margaret, for the staff report and the introduction there that covered many of my topics as well. I'm happy to talk through the service drive kind of procedure that's being refined here in this proposal. But I did want to maybe just make clarity. We, excuse me, we are in between a Toyota dealership and a BMW dealership, and directly across from the Flow Audi Porsche dealership. So this is not the Mercedes-Benz where it currently is today, which is further up the street on the other side of the Toyota. This would be replacing the current Hyundai dealership. And as staff mentioned, replacing the building in what is pretty much the same location. We actually intend to utilize some of the existing foundation along that northwest facade in an effort to keep the footprint and the mass the same. As you can see in the existing images, the existing structure is a collection of boxes that kind of fall down the grade as you work your way west towards town on 250, and kind of a disjointed appearance. Also has a significant amount of interior elevation changes from floor to floor, which as you can imagine is not necessarily ideal for cars on the interior trying to move interior stairs. So the proposal, as staff has mentioned, aims to establish a plinth and create a more sort of cohesive building form that's under a singular kind of unifying roof element. The roof element is a little bit more unique in the automotive dealership and is one of, sort of a trend breaker than just the regular ACM box that a lot of the contemporary auto dealerships employ. And we thought it tied well as kind of a unifying element with this sweeping ACM panel that was on the front that kind of softened the hard geometric lines and sort of broke down the big glass box in a way that felt pretty appropriate for this entrance corridor, especially given its context and its goal of achieving, sort of orderly and complementary appearance along this entrance corridor. The color itself, as we're sort of going through this evaluation internally, as well, seems to be appropriate when you consider the Kia directly up the street, as well as the material palette that's being employed at the Mazda and the Volkswagen. And so when we laid out the ARB submission and we're going through the entrance corridor guidelines, this started to check a lot of the boxes. We weren't disrupting the mass too much. We weren't expanding the building footprint. The existing landscaping was to remain, and you can see the landscaping along Route 250 would remain, and anywhere that there's a missing tree or a dead tree, part of this project would be remediating any missing landscaping, as has been part of all of the flow projects along entrance corridors recently. But the big move was to establish sort of this cohesive building form that was broken down in an appropriate manner, and giving hierarchy to the showroom, simplifying the use within by creating the level slab, as I mentioned, and trying to ensure that the service functions remained to the rear. Currently, correct, you drop off at a service drive-through lane at the rear of the site. That's where the service building is. That building would remain there and just get an exterior facelift. The service drop-off that is on the left of our proposed building would be the customer interaction at that point. So they would pull into this, drop the keys, and then a technician would then take the car to the rear of the site. The customer could then view their car getting its maintenance on a camera, a CCTV scenario, but the aim would be to keep the customers and all sort of customer facing activities in this main showroom building and allowing the more utilitarian and service drive to happen in the rear, service functions to happen in the rear of the site. I think staff brings up two good points. The first being this service drive. And I think, you know, perhaps our renderings, particularly in this corner, or maybe the shadows a little bit dramatic. And we could provide some clarity on the material there. But we felt the step back was appropriate given the use, and that the panel, the consistency of the panel was important, and that the unifying roof element that goes over the main showroom feature helps break this down a little bit, or helps provide the clarity that we're looking for in a hierarchy of a building form. The glass continues back towards that service bay where there's just a couple of garage doors for the service drop off. But we felt like the breaking down of the form was consistent with the goals of the entrance corridor, as well as giving the hierarchy to the showroom and the front element here. So maybe this front elevation provides a little bit more clarity as to how that building form breaks down, despite maybe being in heavy shadow in that one rendering. I think the other comment that staff brings up, which is also a good one, is the change in material from the masonry base to the ACM panel. Something we had kicked around a lot and contemplated and debated, does the ACM panel go all the way to grade, and what are the implications of that or challenges of installing it? It is anticipated at this point in this proposal to be either parched masonry or an eaves with the sort of the high impact reinforcement mesh. But it felt important to kind of break that masonry plane or that base, and then elevate the finishes above the slab and mark the change from the ACM panel. From a logistical perspective or an installation perspective, installing ACM cleanly along that grade line, particularly where people are parking so close to the building, was a concern. Was the ACM going to get damaged quickly? What would that repair look like? Could we make that joint look clean as it met the bottom of the curb and the landscaping along there? And so we did feel it was prudent and important to change that material. But in saying that, I do acknowledge that there would be a gloss difference, and we're hoping that the board can provide guidance on the preferred direction that they'd like to see there. This screen also shows the high gloss white, which is another valid comment, and we would look to tone down that color. We're certainly willing to do that. The high gloss was a brand specification, but in hindsight was it's important to definitely reduce the visibility of that and not draw attention to that service center in the rear. So we could paint it either a black that matches the rest of the building, but maybe that's too eye-catching as well. We could go to a gray. We have a gray color along the roof trim of the front showroom, which might be appropriate. Or it could just be a white that is not a high gloss, that's a satin finish. So we're open to those suggestions as well. This image also finally shows the screening of our strategy for screening the mechanical units. I know staff has a number of comments that we're happy to address regarding glass transparency, proper screening of mechanical units, and just clarifying how that would be done. Remediating landscape and providing more information on site lighting as well. We're happy to do in our subsequent submissions. But initially we were just interested in the feedback and engaging in the dialogue with the board, gaining clarity on some of the items that staff brought up, and always happy to engage in this discussion. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much.
All right, thanks for that presentation. Guess we'll start with Dade.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Can you clarify where you expect the transition between the base material and the ACM to occur?
Sure. So let's see if, so there's basically where the curtain wall sits on the slab of the showroom. So everything below the curtain wall would be the transition. Above that line would be ACM, and below would be the parging and painting.
Thank you. So you mentioned, yeah, parging or EFS. Have you considered brick or other masonry that would be coursed and textured there?
Yeah, I think that is something we have discussed, and I think something we'd be open to, and we see the success of it across the street as well at the Audi and the Porsche dealership. And a dark colored masonry could be a very good fit here. Obviously, from a maintenance perspective, it's preferred. It could give that heavy kind of masonry base that starts to establish hierarchy vertically through the building. So that's definitely something we would consider too if the board looked favorably upon that.
Thank you. And then appreciate you restoring the trees at the entrance corridor. From the photos, it looks like they're all sort of understory ornamental trees. Are there any large shade trees in the existing plan?
You know, I don't know. I think they're all dogwoods, but I'm not entirely sure. We're working with Shimp Engineering on the site plan. There's currently a minor site plan amendment going through the review process. In this area specifically, we're not touching curb and gutter or landscaping or anything like that. So I'm not as familiar with those trees along there.
Thank you. No other questions.
All right, thanks. I guess, Frank?
Sure. Thanks for your presentation. Kind of following on Dade's question, is the swoop element, is that all the ACM all the way to ground? And then on either side of it or on one side of it would be the other material?
That's correct. So the slab level comes across here. The swoop starts and ends at that slab level or sort of terminates into the parging. And then there's this vertical element as well here. Let me jump ahead to that front elevation, which might provide a little bit more clarity. So the established plinth comes along right through here and ends up, tying into our ADA entrance right at this location. So there's the majority of this swoop and then this vertical signage element. All that is ACM.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I don't have any questions for the applicant, so are there any members of the public that want to make a comment?
I don't have anyone online.
All right, great. In that case, the ARB will now go into discussion. I guess we'll start with Frank Hancock, if you have any comments.
Sure. Interesting forms. First of all, I think staff's comments are right on. And I think the focus could kind of get into that transition with the base material and the ACM. I think there's some work maybe that could be done there, and the applicant, I think, put forth some good ideas in the presentation. I think it would just be a matter of seeing them, and I do think maybe even an alternate material or color for that base might actually help the building relate to some of the other buildings in this corridor. And that applicant kind of alluded to that this is a little bit of an outlier, and maybe, the next evolution in auto showroom design. But so be interested to see that. I don't think we have overhead power on this side of the street, so we should be able to get the full landscape requirements. Or if they're already there, just document that. And yeah, other than that, I don't really have anything additional.
All right, thanks. Dade?
Yeah, I appreciate the staff comments and the applicant's presentation. I think, like Frank, focusing on the base, and I think I appreciate the applicant's openness to consider masonry. I think coursed visible masonry would be a good connection to the traditional ways of building and many of the precedents even in the dealerships in this area, and maybe give the project a little bit more texture, which, and I think to the question about gloss, certainly from my part, I don't feel like the gloss needs to match across every part of it. And in fact, some material diversity and subtlety would be appreciated. I think it's, having been in the existing facility, and the applicant notes the changes of floor level, I think it's great. It'll be one level, and actually it's a nice way with a plinth or an architectural, device to create a good display for the vehicles that I think effective. I think in terms of the appreciate the applicant's open to a different color for the white on the service facility. I do think in the context of everything being so dark in the new showroom, that anything that's lighter back there starts to pop a bit in the background. And so a deeply recessive color, I think, would be appropriate. And I think interested, I don't know, maybe it's a question for Margaret, which I missed, relative to the full landscape requirements. If absent curb and gutter work, if there are not existing large shade trees, and if there are ways to incorporate them, is that an option through this?
I think typically we wouldn't go back and apply additional requirements in the area that's not being affected by the proposal, unless you thought that the architectural design required some mitigation through additional landscaping.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I don't have much to add. I'm in agreement with what's been said already. I think I agree that rear building, I think the gloss white seems like a unintended consequence of, like drawing attention to something that you may not want attention. So I'm thinking like a gray or something might be a better choice. And then as everybody said, that transition from the base to the ACM panel, I think like you get the impression that that's something that like conceptually you want that difference to kind of go away, but I think it does need to be treated, because I think it's gonna, as the staff reported, pointed out, I think it, whether or not eventually it will start to make itself different over time. So I think a different, I guess, a more thoughtful treatment of that would serve your client. That's about it as far as my comments. I guess if we could take a look at the recommended motion.
But the recommended motion is to provide the applicant with the comments listed in the staff report to return for another review.
All right, I did not have any adjustments or anything. I guess, Dave, do you have any tweaks?
None to propose at this time.
Frank?
No, I don't.
All right, great. In that case, would anybody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move to provide the applicant with the comments listed in the staff report to be addressed with the next submittal.
Second?
All right, thanks. We could put that to a vote.
All right, Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
All right,
Thank you.
all right, thanks a lot. Our next item is ARB 2024-71, 400 Rye Road West.
Good afternoon. Second. Application being reviewed today is a conceptual plan for a special use permit. The proposal is to establish outdoor storage, display, and sales associated with development of a wholesale plumbing business. The site is located at 400 Ryle Road West and contains two structures, a brick face building at the front of the property and a large metal shed towards the rear of the paved area. The the entrance corridor guidelines stipulate that the storage area should be situated to eliminate visibility. And if after appropriate sighting, the area still has a negative visual impact on the entrance corridor, screening should be provided. The site's layout is already established, and the size and orientation of the existing building along the frontage are insufficient to screen the stored items. Between the storage area and the frontage, the plan shows an 8-foot tall black aluminum picket fence replacing the existing chain link fence, along with a 3-foot tall berm landscape with deciduous and evergreen plantings. The fencing shown is not screening fencing. Solid screen fence could reduce the visual impact of the stored items to those taller than the fence, but a screening fence of approximately 368 feet would have visual impacts of its own and could result in reduced frontage landscaping. The plantings shown exceed the minimum requirements, but they were not completely provide complete screening, and the western site entrance creates a permanent gap in screening. Although the proposed fencing and landscaping will not completely screen the storage area from the entrance corridor, the addition of a landscape berm and the removal of chain link fencing are expected to create a more organized and visually appealing development as viewed from the entrance corridor. Regarding the organization of the storage area, one of the site sections notes the maximum storage height is 12 feet and shows a pipe storage rack at the same height as the fence along the fence line. The applicant's area provides exhibits that outline the materials that would be stored at this location. The exhibits show a variety of materials distributed with no clear method or organization. The visual impact of the storage area could be reduced by positioning the items with lower overall stack height closer to the entrance corridor and taller items further away, and parking vehicles depending on type and size towards the front of the storage area. Staff has recommended a few revisions to the concept plan to be reviewed reviewed by the ARB prior to planning commission review. And we have listed a few draft conditions for the SP and a few some recommendations for the site plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris. Guess we'll start with Frank Stoner.
Thanks, Chris. I don't have any questions.
All right, thanks. Dave?
Chris, thank you. Is there any detail provided on the gate entry at the secondary entrance to the storage area?
Could you say that again?
Is there any elevation or other detail provided in the application on the appearance of the proposed black aluminum gate?
No, yeah, it just has that example of the fencing.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Frank?
Looking at that area, is that an existing drive in?
It is.
It is. Thanks. I don't have any other questions.
All right, I don't have any questions, so guess if the applicant has a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Valerie Long with the law firm of Williams Mullen, here representing the applicant, B&D Holdings. My colleague Megan Nadastup is here with me, also landscape architects from Timmons Group. And we also have several representatives participating virtually from B&D Holdings, as well as the proposed tenant business. I imagine that most of you are relatively familiar with this site. It's been owned by the phone company for a very long time. It's been zoned industrial since the early 70s. Not technically in the development area. The Rio Road is the dividing line there, but because it was zoned industrial before the development area boundaries were determined, that zoning was left in place. And it is 2 tax map parcels, both the smaller rectangular one there at 400 and then the larger one behind it. It's just a close up the aerials. Pretty much the site, it was interesting. It looks very, very similar now to how it has looked since the early 1970s. Obviously, these photos are a little blurry, but you can see how even back then, the phone company and its predecessors were storing equipment, vehicles, fleet vehicles, and other equipment there. And there's been storage in the back area back here for quite a long time. And as the staff report indicates, this area has been determined to have existing permitted outdoor storage, non-conforming, but legal and thus permitted in the back. So really, we're talking more about the storage in this area. The existing conditions, as the staff report noted, almost no landscaping and unobstructed views of the storage area, as well as unobstructed and unscreened views of the mechanical equipment right there in the front. Again, these are just street view images. If you haven't been by recently, again, an existing chain link fence, again, unobstructed views of the area. We obviously want to improve that. But that is, you can see there are some trees there, but just not very many. This was in our packet, so I imagine you've seen it. Again, the existing mechanical here, that's not obviously part of the storage for outdoor storage and display, but because we knew it was appropriate to provide a pretty robust landscape plan along the frontage to screen the outdoor storage, we felt it was appropriate to also go ahead and screen the mechanical equipment and provide some plantings along the frontage of the building to help improve the overall frontage conditions, not just that needed for screening the proposed equipment. Again, this just shows the new landscape plan, and I have a color version I'll get to in a moment, but proposed berm and a fairly robust landscape plan to help screen the storage materials. Here's a close-up. Mr. Vanderwerf, we do not yet have, I don't have an answer to your question about the gate, but we can certainly find out. I presume it would be similar to the fence, but we need to find that out. It's a good question. You saw this as well with the way the berm would function and help provide some additional screening of the stored equipment from the entrance corridor. We are fine with the proposal to have a condition or modify the concept plan to show that shorter materials would be stored up closer to the road and taller materials would be stored further to the back. It's just obviously a color rendering to provide a bit of a better visual image of what the proposed landscaping would look like along the entrance corridor compared to what is there now. And we didn't have it on the plan, but we're agreeable to the staff report suggested a note on the plan confirming that these existing plantings along the boundaries would remain in place. There's no desire or plan to remove that. This is a zoomed in version of the street view showing the existing conditions of the parking area. That whole area is visible from the entrance corridor, not screened. You can see obviously the stored equipment in the back there. And again, another reminder of the absence of plantings along the frontage of the building. The applicant's not proposing any material modifications to the building other than the plantings. Oh, and again, this is the mechanical equipment, which I know you would never allow today without screening, if there at all. But the new plan does propose to screen that equipment with new plantings. And again, the renderings showing that area and the vast improvement of the condition over existing conditions. Again, showing the mechanical equipment being screened, close up of the fence. There was a recommendation in the staff report to require any stored materials to be set back 45 feet from the property line. What that would effectively result in is a 100-foot setback of stored materials from the entrance corridor. We are not comfortable with that proposal, given the depth of the existing planting area shown 55 feet in that area. We think there's plenty of room for robust plantings there, such that, again, as long as the taller equipment is not stored in this area, that this setback is not necessary. The proposed tenant really needs all the space for all its stored materials and needs to have the flexibility to respond to customer demands. Sometimes they need lots of 36-inch pipes. Other days they need smaller pipes. You'll see some photos with fire hydrants stored, things like that. They need to be able to move things around and have materials available for whatever customers need in the coming days. Again, just I want to show you a series of the existing conditions and then the proposed renderings right after it to really try to drive home the point, what a substantial increase the planting plan is over the existing conditions. So pretty dramatic improvement, we think, particularly given that this property has looked this way for 5 decades. I don't know if the building's been there for 5 decades, but it has looked pretty rough for that long, and this will be a substantial improvement. We wanted to also provide some photos of what type of equipment might be stored there. Again, the proposed tenant is a National Plumbing Waterworks distributor of materials. So these are the types of equipments. These are from other locations, just to demonstrate the types of materials that are stored. Those are fire hydrants. Again, just a close-up of the planting plan and the rendering there. We would like to have some conversations with you all about 3 of the staff recommended conditions of approval. I think 2 were to the concept plan and 1 was to the conditions. There was a suggestion that the concept plan be revised and provide a layout plan for what materials would be stored in which locations. And again, because of the nature of the business, they can't predict from really 1 week to the next how much of certain materials they will have. So the idea of saying all the 36-inch pipes will be here and the fire hydrants will be here and the smaller pipes here is overly restrictive for their business needs. They need to have the flexibility to move things around. The other suggestion was a note or some sort of designation on the plan, again, that taller stored materials would be closer to the back and shorter in the front. We are agreeable to the second one. And we think that with that condition, plus the plantings along the frontage, that there's not really a need to have a layout plan for the stored material, that the new plantings will screen the materials enough that it won't matter in that regard. And likewise, the staff recommendation for a 45-foot setback from the fence area, which again is equivalent to a 100-foot setback from the entrance corridor. We think that's far too large, and we would ask for flexibility to be able to use the storage area up to the fence. We'd be happy to answer any questions or comments you may have. This is an exploratory review. We did go ahead and submit the special use permit application at the end of the year so that we could be as efficient as possible with the application review process. So we'll be incorporating any feedback into those plans.
All right. Well, thanks for your presentation. Guess we'll see if anyone has questions, starting with Frank Stoner.
Yeah, first let me say, this is a dramatic improvement. Thank you for your effort. I had one question, which is, did you guys explore an opaque fence? And if so, why did you decide on the choice you've made?
Sure. We did think about, that was my initial thought was, oh, well, we'll just have an opaque fence and you won't see anything. Staff then made us aware of your safety and screening and security fencing guidelines that talk about, and I think those were an attachment to the staff report. I was not previously familiar with those, but essentially the thought was that an opaque fence of 368 feet thereabouts, that would not be considered consistent with the fence guidelines to have just a long opaque fence. It would have to have a lot of undulations, and it wouldn't be just a straight fence. Would need to have a fairly nice level of design and decor, to the extent that trying to have an opaque fence designed that could be approvable by you all would be even more challenging. And perhaps not have as nice of an overall effect, even with then additional plantings. So I will say I did follow closely your actions and review of the Carter Machinery project just down the street at Rio over by the library. And so I learned a lot from your review of that, and then tried to kind of think along the same lines of, like them, they had a aluminum picket fence, but lots of screening in front. So we thought, and that's obviously much closer to the entrance corridor than this one will be. So that was our thought process. Again, this is a conceptual review. We've appreciate your feedback on that. So if that's something that you all think would be better, we're open to those ideas, but we know this aluminum fence will work with the client's budget.
Awesome. Thank you. No
Right.
other questions.
Thanks. Jake?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation and do appreciate the landscape improvement to the corridor. Let's see, I appreciate your description of the applicant's willingness to look at storing taller material toward the rear of the site. I was interested to ask, do you think there might be an acceptable like regulating line similar to the way that we look at mechanical screening that looks at sight lines from the EC and establishes the height of storage in that way?
If I understand you correctly, that the idea we've sort of kicked around, for lack of a better phrase,
Yeah.
is literally drawing a line on the concept plan. Sorry.
It would be in section potentially that would sort of establish a regulated height that increased.
Sort of,
to
you
the-
know, we thought somewhere maybe in this range, nothing taller than the fence height beyond this point, or say in this range, I would say, something to that effect. That was how we thought might be the easiest way to identify it and then comply with it too.
Is there a maximum height of storage that the applicant anticipates?
I think they're 12 feet is what they said, the tallest they ever store anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thanks. Frank?
Thank you for your presentation. Great exhibits too. I feel like it's easy to understand what the questions are. Just that idea that the applicant would store materials taller than the fence, is that just written into the special use permit? Like, how does that become part of the?
When you say the idea that they could, do you mean the ability of the applicant?
Or
to do
that commitment that the applicant would make? How's that documented? Is it part of the special use permit? Is it?
What my thinking was, and again, because this is just conceptual, first of all, was that we would update this conceptual plan and draw a line through that orange storage area and essentially say, you know, say it's right here or somewhere thereabouts. Nothing taller, no materials taller than the fence height are stored between this line and the fence, is what I've envisioned. And so that would then be eventually on the special use permit application plan. And so that if the Board of Supervisors approves the SUP plan, that would become an essential element of that plan that the applicants would have to comply with. Could also be a condition of approval, as probably would be in it both.
That's helpful. Thank you. And then just curious, this exhibit that shows the non-conforming, like the different colors, just curious why it doesn't align with the property line, why it kind of comes inboard to that other parcel?
We don't know. That's
That was
just
just
how,
a separate boundary that,
that's just how it's been based on aerials and analysis, mostly using the county GIS imagery, that's where the existing storage has been. So they don't actually intend to do much more with that. The
Mhm.
primary area is up in the orange area where there's asphalt and, you know, it's flatter and more appropriate for storage of materials and obviously closer to their building.
thank you.
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna ask this, just
Okay,
because I'll regret it if I
sure.
don't ask it, but is there any possibility of eliminating the entrance off of Rye Road and having access behind the building? So that the landscaping could be continuous?
I'm not sure I understand. Do you mean using access here
Yeah.
and then not
Right.
having an entrance here at all? We haven't discussed that. So I'd have to talk to our clients about that. I assume that they would have shown something like that, or we would have talked about it if that was an option.
Right, I would have
I
thought
think
that, but I
I'm gonna
figured-
assume they need it for circulation purposes. They, as you can imagine, use very large flatbed trucks coming and going all day long with deliveries, drop off, customer deliveries. And so I'm speculating that they probably need the circulation. They need that separate entrance for circulation purposes, but we
Yeah.
can certainly take that back to them.
All right,
Yeah.
well, thanks. Yeah, like I said, I
Yeah.
figured it's,
Sure.
if it's there, it's probably needed. So. Are there any members of the public that want to make a comment?
I don't have anyone online.
All right, thanks. In that case, the ARB will now go into discussion. Guess we'll see what the comments are, starting with Frank Hancock.
Sure, I think this will be a drastic improvement for the corridor. I think adding the berm is going above and beyond. I think actually it will be more effective than it was shown in the visualizations. Yeah, I don't really have any issues. I think to me, it feels appropriate. One little thing, I think there's maybe some sighting of the evergreen trees you could do to, you know, reduce the visibility a little bit more. Maybe they're located between the berm and the road, or, you know, some of them are on the high side or on the top of the berm, but I do appreciate the kind of naturalistic layout and design, so I wouldn't want a straight line of one species. I don't think that would be effective, but yeah, I mean, the application isn't to really do anything to the building. It's not adding a new building, so I think the impact on the corridor, if you think about it in those terms, it's an upgrade. But
All right, thanks. Dade?
Sure, yeah, to use Frank's words, appreciate the landscape upgrade and generally supportive of it. I appreciate the applicant will provide some more information on the gate at the fence. And appreciate while they're sensitive to the extent of opacity for the full fence being an issue, maybe it would be useful if that gate were opaque. But yeah, I appreciate the improvement proposed to the property.
All right, thanks. Frank?
Yeah, I agree on both counts. I also tend to agree that an opaque fence might be less effective here than what they proposed, especially given the amount of landscaping that they're proposing in front of it. It's a vast improvement by any measure. So I applaud the effort, and I don't really see any issues from my perspective. Thanks.
Thanks. And I totally agree with what's been said. I feel like the proposal kind of goes beyond the minimum that you would expect to, you know, plop down a few trees. And so I do appreciate the extent of the landscaping that's proposed. I also agree with the height stipulation. Generally, like if it's under the top of the fence for a certain amount, that seems like an easy way to kind of handle it. Just even in the future, you know, you can kind of take a visual marker at the top of the fence and then taller material in the back. So I think if you're willing to do that, like, I don't think the other stipulations are really necessary. So if we could take a look at the recommended motion.
We've got two motions for you today. The first one regarding the concept plan for the special use. I've added to that list that are eliminating the Rye Road entrance to the storage area. And I've just noted gate details. I'm not sure if you want those at this point or not.
Yes, since I'm the one who brought it up, I think the Rye Road entrance, since it says consider, I'm comfortable with it staying, even though there's no penalty for not doing that, so. And to me, at least, the gate details, seems reasonable also.
Can I ask one question of the applicant? If we were to establish a sort of fixed line at whatever, maybe the 45 feet that was suggested, and at that line, everything in front of that line would be no higher than the fence? Is there a dimension that would be preferred there?
We haven't quite figured that out yet. We wanted to kind of get some feedback from you, but kind of in the general location. If I don't know if I can switch back to the screen, or if Margaret or Chris could go to the conceptual plan. And just before I forget, I have a question for you about the gate details in a moment, so I don't forget. Thank you, Margaret. Where you have that little sort of the piece that juts out there on the southern end of the building closest to the outdoor storage. Yeah, we thought maybe along the top of that little jut, which is going to be a little bit more than 100 feet back, but somewhere in that range is what we were thinking. So probably certainly no closer than 100 feet from the entrance corridor, or 45 feet from the gate. So maybe 50 feet from the gate, 60 feet from the gate is probably the way to clarify that. Is that what you have in mind?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
that was the nature.
Yeah.
Question.
If I may, we would welcome your feedback and recommendations on the gate material. If there's a preference for it to be opaque, I can appreciate how that would help. And if so, any particular feedback or guidance on that versus picket fence, or, right now it's a chain link fence. So thank you.
Well, interested in my colleagues' thoughts as well. I think, yeah, I think opaque, but I don't know whether that's aluminum slats, and whether it's horizontal or vertical, or I don't know, defer to others. And I don't, it's traditional to have potentially piers at either side of an opening like that if there was something necessary for support, and there was a moment where there was, a brick pier, or otherwise that would be a possibility, but it's not an expectation or a prescription. I don't know. What other ideas do you have for what would be appropriate?
Yeah, it could be a number of things. I agree. I don't know, we need like any masonry piers or anything, but it'll probably need to be a beefier post, and yeah, I don't want to be prescriptive.
Right.
Yeah.
I think to the extent it had some texture, that would likely be helpful. I mean,
What if you kept the same rhythm of the vertical
the pickets at the other
pickets,
location.
the vertical pickets,
would
and
be
just put
an
a
option.
metal backing? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without pictures, but I would maybe leave it to the applicant if folks agree that an opaque material and a dark material be appropriate with some texture, and rhythm, might leave it at that. I don't know. Interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little torn on that, just because
Okay.
yeah, they were kind enough to provide a sketch of like the development of the landscaping over time. And so I think you will see more of everything initially. And my thought was at least, I think what would look better initially was if the gate just matched the fence. Then obviously I think an opaque gate with a, you know, non-opaque fence, once all the landscaping is there, will look more, you know, reasonable. But I'm just wondering if it would look kind of strange right off the bat, like to have a, you know, opaque gate with a, basically like a.
If there are
open
ever
fence.
temporal clauses like once the landscape.
That's a good point. Especially too, it's
Good luck
viewed,
enforcing it.
Yeah.
viewed from a vehicle. You know, you're not really gonna be looking straight on at it.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
I tend to agree. I think it's gonna look awkward, certainly initially.
yeah, right.
yeah. Although I think in the long run, once the landscape is so beautifully screening everything and the building is screening everything. See the glimpse.
Then the entrance becomes less visible unless you're right next to it.
Yeah,
'Cause you'll
right.
see it.
So consider an opaque or consider options.
I would just mention that you may not really need to figure that level of detail out right now. If the special use permit gets approved, it would come back to you for additional review later, and maybe
Okay.
that level of detail is for later.
That sounds good.
Sounds fine.
Margaret, do we want to reflect the 50 feet or 100 feet off the corridor for storage of 8 feet? This,
We were thinking that the applicant would take these comments back and come back with a plan that shows
And I
The
appreciate the
revised
applicant's understanding that the present maximum storage height is 12 feet. I don't know whether that will be reflected in the special use permit. I mean, certainly
it
there
would
are.
be for sure.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Should we strike number one?
That, uh, whatever is your preference.
I think that's consistent with the discussion.
And number two, is it just that boundary versus rear of the site?
So I've just added, taller than the fence height will be limited to a specific area at the rear of the site, meaning we'll want to see that plan revised to show that line beyond which the taller equipment would be stored. Does that work? I'm happy to add whatever wording you think is best.
what if we just said revise the concept plan to show the area? Suitable for storage above 8 feet.
So,
I was gonna make a motion.
oh, okay, great. Yeah, so we'll do this one and then move on to the next one. So,
I'll move to recommend revisions to the concept plan as listed in the staff report to be reviewed by the ARB prior to the planning commission review as follows. Strike item 1, revise item 2. Revise the concept plan to show the area suitable for storage of materials and equipment taller than 8 feet. And add item 4, consider eliminating the Raya Road entrance to the storage area and strike number 5.
all right, thanks. I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock.
Aye.
All right, thanks a lot. So I guess we'll move on to the next one.
Second motion that we're recommending is just to support staff's recommended draft conditions on the special use permit, which we would likely update with a revised plan coming in, and also to support the recommendations for the site plan, which would follow the special use permit approval.
So would item 2 be struck to align with the? Revised to match.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Strike.
Strike,
Item 2.
strike or revise item 2 to align with the prior motion.
These are only draft conditions, so we will do the wordsmithing.
Can you scroll down just to see the? You ready for a motion, Chris?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll move to support staff's recommended draft conditions on the special use permit and revisions for the final site plan as follows. Revision to strike item 2 of the draft conditions on the special use permit.
Great, thanks.
Just note that the number 1 there would be adjusted.
And revise number 1 to align with the prior motion.
Thank you.
Anybody like to second that?
I'll second.
Could put that to a vote?
Right. And Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Okay, we have one work session item today, which is ARB 2024-49, High School Center 2.
Okay, we're there. In November of last year, the ARB reviewed ARB 2024-49 High School Center 2 and approved that request pending staff administrative approval of several conditions and ARB review of alternate colors for the metal. This work session is to resolve that metal color issue. I've got illustrations of each color that's been discussed so far to show you. This is the original dark bronze shown in the applicant's illustrations. This is the medium bronze that was submitted by the applicant in response to your request for alternate colors. This is a gray color that was under consideration by the applicant early in the design process. This image is a comparison showing the existing condition street view at the top. The dark bronze color is in the middle. The medium bronze is on the bottom and the gray color is on the right. Got some possible motions for you when you're ready to get to that point. And the applicants are here and I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thanks. Guess we'll just start with Frank Hancock. Do you have any questions?
Trying to remember if I was at this meeting when we talked about this. Did we not like the dark bronze? We just wanted to see options.
Some of us
Some,
liked it.
some of us didn't care for the dark bronze, thought that a lighter color would both relate better to the existing.
Just want to make
campus
sure I don't
and-
contradict myself. I have to go back to the tape and find out that I
I
picked
can
one
try
or
and
the
find
other.
the minutes and see if you were there.
I think you may not have been there.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
I saw that.
So
No
just
more
to-
questions.
Yeah.
I think that the issue was, we pointed out in the staff report that the color was a contrast to the existing buildings and a contrast with the sky and the mountain backdrop.
Oh,
Mr. Hancock was absent.
Oh, I was absent.
Yes.
Yes.
I thought. Thank you. Now I can say whatever. you know. Cool. Thank you.
Frank, do you have any questions?
Is there a rendered version of the gray? Similar to the other two, or no?
Yeah, I agree. A rendering would be helpful. You know, I think in the Wayback Machine, when you weren't here, Frank, I think I was at least of the opinion that as an addition to the campus, I thought that something with a lighter gray that related to the existing building would be more successful and more appropriate in terms of continuing the existing fabric that's there, and that a lighter and cooler color would likely transition better to the sky without as great or as stark a contrast. I think it's fair to say that while we had differing opinions, everybody agreed that the mountain backdrop and the sky are the central features of the site. And I think that's the context for the discussion. Right.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I guess I don't have any questions. So if the applicant has a presentation or wants to come up and answer questions, now is the time.
Can you remind me where to plug this?
It's on the monitor. Other side, I think, yeah.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for having us once again. We do have some renderings of.
Can you
all
please
of
state
the-
your name?
Oh, thank you. My name is Kylan Shirley. I'm with Quinn Evans Architects. I'm representing Albemarle County Public Schools. Thank you. So the first few slides we have here are the original images that you've seen and that were presented just a moment ago. This is the dark bronze color that was initially proposed. These images here are just some of the design inspiration that was shared with our client, Albemarle Public County Schools, as we developed the design the masonry portions of the building are essentially intended to reflect and be representative of granite, limestone, clay, brick, terracotta, kind of the natural earthen materials of the region. So that's how we arrived at the orange clay bricks and the blended kind of light gray color bricks that are present in the design. This is the image that was shown a moment ago. This is an image from our early design studies showing those colors in combination with a lighter gray. At this point, we thought, there's just not a lot of contrast between the various grays that we were looking at, the brick and the metal panel together, and it felt a little dull. Hence our direction to move towards that darker panel to bring in a third element, if you will. And then the idea was that the mullions and framing of storefront curtain wall systems were this darker metal element along with the metal panel. So that dark color was a third element that was in contrast or contrasted both in tone and color and materiality with the masonry. So that's how we arrived at the design that was presented previously. Here's that same image with a darker color. We felt that it had a lot more pop, a lot more presence, and hence proceeded that way. This shows those brick colors and then our three metal panel colors that we have renderings of here in a moment. All the way on the left is the lightest gray that we've looked at. That's pretty close to the gray that was in the image I just had a moment ago. In the middle, there's a medium bronze, and all the way on the right is a dark bronze. And as I'm sure you're all aware, most metal panel companies provide a medium bronze and a dark bronze. It's essentially consistent across most manufacturers. When you get into lighter gray colors, it varies a lot manufacturer to manufacturer. So we actually are at a point now where contractors on board, they were able to tell us, here's the company that we're going to provide. Because as you know, publicly bid project, we don't know exactly what manufacturer we're going to get. So what you see here is something I put into this presentation. It's zinc gray from Morin Corporation. That's not actually the color. So what you see on the screen now is just slightly different than what's in the renderings. The renderings we were able to do after we got the actual metal panel color from the manufacturer. So it's very, very close though. I left it in here because it's essentially the same, but just the zinc gray name, it's called slate gray or something, right? It's same color, different name, but. Okay, so dark bronze, this is our original. We have a couple different angles. And then this is the view from the road here. Now here's the medium bronze, got those same angles. And from the road. And then the light gray, where the gray and the tone of the brick are really very similar. So we agree that the lighter colors have less of a presence against the mountain backdrop in this view. We've done our best to replicate what that mountain view is actually like, but this is an artistic rendering. It's not identical to the view that's there. At this point though, I think as the design team and the owner's preference is to proceed with a medium bronze metal panel color. We think it's a balance between mitigating the image of the building against the backdrop, while still providing, a third element to contrast with other building materials. We think that's the right compromise that kind of respects both sides of that coin. So I'm happy to click back and forth to any image if you'd like to see it further.
All right, well, thanks a lot for that. We'll see if you got questions, starting with Dave. Do you have any questions?
No questions, but thank you very much for preparing the additional visualization.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Frank Stoner,
No questions either. Yeah, thanks.
right?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions either.
Thank you.
So, I guess we'll see if, are there any members of the public who want to make a comment?
No.
All right, great. In that case, the ARB will now go into discussion. I guess we'll start with Frank Stoner.
May defer to the architects. on this decision. My personal opinion is, I think the lighter gray is better suited. Having said that, I think the building's far enough off the entrance corridor that I'm not inclined to make a huge over it. But I do think the lighter gray integrates better with the existing high school. And it certainly integrates better with the mountains behind, or as a more subtle impact on that view. So my 2 cents.
Thanks, Frank Hancock.
Sure, thank you. I agree with comments, Frank. However, I was just kind of surprised at how much of an impact changing that color had on, I think, the architecture and the view, and I think more importantly, the architecture. I like both. I like the light gray and I like both bronzes. But yeah, at this point, I think I would defer to the design team. I think it's an excellent set of exhibits to study it and understand it. And this is, as far as the entrance corridor, this view is pretty spectacular, and the site is pretty spectacular, I think, because of that. So not an easy decision. But I do think the medium bronze is compelling, and I think fits within the architecture. I think kind of that architectural statement too of the gradation going from the bottom to the top of the building. I think it makes sense in that context. Having said that, I like the other one too. I think the gray, that's a really nice, like, subtle, calm rendering. But yeah, that's just some commentary on where I'm headed. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Dade?
Sure. Well, thanks again to the applicant for the additional materials. I think for me, they affirm my initial expectation that the lighter color is more cohesive with the existing campus and maybe more consistent and compatible with the view. While I appreciate the applicant's consideration that perhaps the darker color is a greater accent to the building, I think in terms of thinking about the whole corridor, the whole complex, the whole campus, that the lighter gray is a more effective selection, and certainly would be in support of that, but appreciate everybody on the board's consideration.
All right, thanks. I guess, yeah, I was kind of in the minority last time. I really like the dark bronze, and the medium bronze is slightly less good looking than the dark bronze. I thought that was a good medium. I thought the light gray gets a little bit washed out, and in consideration of like the view behind the building, I know that like the less distinctive choice, but I guess my preference would be for the medium bronze. But I guess that kind of gets down to the kind of essential, I guess, personal preference nature of like color selection. I think I would ultimately like defer to what the design team and the client, what their preference is. But I do appreciate the additional visuals. I do think the medium bronze and certainly the light gray like really do kind of address the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. So take a look at the motion.
I do think Dade makes an interesting and valid point about sort of what our role is, specific to the building or the context. If you're only, well, if the context is the primary consideration, how does that affect the way you view? Because I agree, the building,
Sure.
it gives it a nice pop. If you're just looking at the building, the dark bronze gives it a nice pop at the top. But when I look at the renderings from far back, it was fairly obvious and compelling to me that, yeah, it just didn't fit with the overall sort of landscape.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. That's-
Any opinions from staff?
This all started with a staff comment. I think that the entrance quarter design guidelines are not just about the building, it's about the building in the context, so.
Yes, hope it wouldn't be out of order. I could make a motion.
Yeah.
It
See
could
how it
fail
goes.
under its own weight or just
Yeah.
so. I'll move to approve the light gray color offered by the applicant for the high school Center 2 building.
Does anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
All right, if we could put that to a vote.
Okay. Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
No,
Mr. Henningsen. So- He just gave
No.
me the-
Sorry.
That's all right.
the most contentious item.
I know, right?
Think this has ever happened.
No, I don't think it ever has.
Well,
We
yeah, I've
called-
never
called
said
Toro.
no before, but.
You guys have never been wrong like this before.
So just for the record, that motion failed, so we could go for a second motion. Anyone has one?
We could, discuss a little bit more, if that's okay.
Yeah, certainly.
I think there's a lot going on the site with the high school, existing high school and middle school and elementary school. And I don't think you can see the Boys and Girls Club from the corridor, but I mean, there are lots of buildings and just thinking about the high school, that facade is an addition or is
There
it's
is a lot
not like
going on.
it's the high school that was built there and that's what we're dealing with. So, I guess you could argue the other side of that and say, well, why add another distinct element to that soup? But I think it's nice for buildings to relate to each other, but I do think it's nice, for this building to have its own character. And I appreciate kind of the architect's concept of it and the vision of it, and that it is distinct within the materials. It automatically kind of connects to the existing buildings and there's a relationship there. In some way, yeah, I'll stop there, but I don't know if I'll convince you, but then.
Go back to the rendered image that just shows the building, the more close up.
Which one?
Well, there were three on a page, but the third one, the light gray, just was a close up of the.
Is that, is this what you wanted or?
Yeah, yeah. That was it.
Whoops, yours, okay.
Nope.
It'll be back.
Yeah, I guess the case I would make is twofold. One, there's a lot going on here. Just with the brick pattern. Feels like when you throw the dark bronze top on, well, it's a nice accent. It just makes it even busier. And I think there is, well, every building can have its own identity. I think there is should be some desire to unify. It's part of the campus. It's part of the school. Boys and Girls Club is something different, a different use. And it's a light building, which again tends to blend into the background a little better. Yeah, to me, it feels out of place. Having said that, if I had to choose one or the other, I would probably choose the medium bronze, although the medium bronze in fact, I think will seem darker than what's shown in this rendering.
Yes, I'm looking at that photo on the top there, and it appears that some of the existing trim that's visible, at least in that photo, is white, and some of it appears to be gray.
Where is the white? I see the white. Looked at that on Google Earth before I came today. I'm a little unclear as to where the Boys and Girls Club is relative to.
Right, so I think that's the ticketing and some locker facility for the field, and I think that the roof is actually shingled, but here is rendered white, maybe is what's showing up in terms of the rendering, if that's what you're referring to.
White building, you don't really see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. That may be a shingle.
Chris has the street view pulled up if you want to, do you want to look at that?
So it's that shingled roof over the, so then immediately to the left. Oh, sorry, the white there, right. That white, I think since this time has been replaced with metal panel that matches the rest of the building and is gray, I think. Appears white, but it is the metal panel matching the metal panel on other parts of the school.
It's gray.
It's a gray.
That's just the sun. Screening on the rooftop appears to be closer to maybe the.
Mhm. Does look darker in that view than some of them.
Better than I'm thinking it does.
Yeah, the roof over the auditorium is a darker color
Color,
than in the
yes.
renderings.
Well, does everyone still feel the same way? Is there any movement in terms of like, I'll say, color preference or anything? And get me wrong, I don't think the gray looks bad. It's more like, in this case, it kind of does align with my personal opinion, but I also am kind of trying to keep into consideration the stated preference of the architect and client. So, which is kind of where my medium bronze, and,
Do you have
preference
any
is
idea
coming from.
what the color is next to the chimney there that's in that screen? Yeah. Anybody know what that is?
And on the brick boards that are behind you, Chris, are there any, are those for this project and are there any metal samples? Is that,
That's medium.
that's medium? Wow. Okay.
That might
That
actually
sample
be the
says
medium.
midnight, sorry, midnight bronze, do you know?
Midnight bronze.
Must be
That's the dark.
Okay.
Well,
Do they have the medium?
Sounds like or it looks like.
Gray that he showed us actually looks pretty close to that.
Okay.
Would it be worth someone making a motion for the medium gray just to see where that goes? I mean, excuse me, the
Medium
medium
bronze.
bronze.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the medium bronze.
I'll second.
Right, Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Um, given the distance off the corridor, I'm gonna go ahead and vote aye, even though.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Just since I've forced us to spend this much time on it, I'll be consistent and say no. Thank you.
It's good. This is healthy for us.
Yeah, actually, I think
Yeah,
we've opened a
sometimes
new
you gotta-
dialogue here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you all.
All right, well, I expect a lot less controversy when we vote on the December 16th, 2024 minutes. Does anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that. We could put that to a vote.
Okay. Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, do any board members or staff have any additional items?
No,
All right.
Question, when will the county jail return for review? Is it scheduled yet?
Yes, it's coming up. One of the
Give me a minute,
February
I can
meetings, I
tell you.
think.
I think it's in February. One second, let me look one other place.
I think it's the second meeting in February.
Okay, thank you.
All right, in that case, the next ARB meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 3rd. It seemed like everybody can make it.
yes.
I will not be
Uh,
here.
okay, all right,
Well, I will, so that's three of us. Yeah, I don't know whether Tara's coming.
right, yeah, Tara, unknown, but, yep. All right, in that case, this meeting is adjourned until our next meeting on Monday, February 3rd, 2025. It's 2:41 by my watch. Thanks a lot.